I don't usually talk about this. I allude to it sometimes, but we have this election coming up on March 5th, and my name is going to be printed on the ballot, so I'm an actual candidate. And this House district's in a lot of trouble. A lot of trouble. What's going on is he's been called out for it. Ernest Bales, the current so-called representative, he represents the interest of Trey Harris, and it's awful what's going on. I can't believe this guy. This week I did I read an article. I did it on because people need to know about it, but the drainage system is really bad. It's flooding all the way down to Kingman Humble. Ernest Bales will let this guy do whatever he wants. And this so-called development, which is a shantytown for illegal aliens, is larger than the city of Manhattan. And I mean, this is all documented. He pumped, this Trey Harris guy pumped like 38,000 tons of raw sewage into our drinking waters.
Wow.
And he puts the signs out this morning, go around and see Bales for Texas. He campaigns as a conservative Republican, and he goes and he votes for the Democrats in Austin, trying to pull the wool over people's eyes.
Right.
And the sad thing is, there's a woman running. Her name is Janet Holt, and she's also a rhino. I got a message yesterday, and someone says, "What's your position about property taxes?" Like, we need to abolish them. We abolish them. And she's like, they don't need to take. I got a video on this, and it's like, look, I love my country. I'm a patriot.
Yep.
I don't mind paying taxes, but you're taxing me off my land. It's unjust. It's not right.
It's not right.
And if they're these greedy politicians, if they can't have fair tax rates, then just abolish them altogether. You can't trust them to do property taxes.
It's all about the money.
So anyway, this is important. This guy, he's such a phony. He's like what did he do? He got exposed. He created Colony Ridge with what's called House Bill 4341. Ernest Bales did. I didn't create it. Trey Harris already started that. Like 4 years before. Yeah, right. Right. Don't give me that. I did that to manage it. Yeah, well, you managed to let him put 38,000 tons of waste in the. You managed to let him create a flood disaster. You managed to let a shantytown go up. You managed to allow the Gulf and Sinaloa cartels set up shop over here. So this is an important election. And I don't think, Janice Holt's not going to confront. She's going to get, let's manage. Trey Harris, he's such a nice guy. He's so generous. Wow. Get some nice campaign contributions. What about, look, I'm all for border security. I'm all for law enforcement. But these illegal aliens are being exploited over there. It's not right. To allow people to be, we're supposed to be Christians, and you're allowing that to go on? Girls being sex trafficked? I mean, it's a free country. If one wants to, go out and have fun, it's not right, but she's free to do it. But what does sex traffic mean? That means she's being enslaved for sex.
Right.
It's not something she's doing on her own free will.
Right.
And we're just going to turn around and let that go on?
Yeah.
Like I said, well, a woman's body, she do what she wants. But that's not that. That's, you better do this or that or the other. You're, living in coercion and fear and sex slavery. Maybe Ernest Bales is okay with that. I'm not. I'm not okay with that.
Penalty for that should be death. Just like it says in the Bible. Death.
And it's going on just a mile and a half from here. Let's hold them accountable. All right, if you have your Bible, let's open our Bibles up, and we're going to look at the book of Zechariah. Jeannie was... So, we had Hanukkah on Thursday. Sadly, that's the night my aunt passed away. shortly after the service. But my intent was to put the menorah together and display it, but something went wrong. Guess what went wrong? Glue. Glue. I picked up the last piece that morning. We have all the branches here. If you want to go over and look at it, now all the branches are represented. And we could try to put it up there, but I think what we need to do is I'm going to order the other branches. Once the new resin branches come in, I'm kind of fearful. I could do it, but I think I do want to do it. I want to hold it up and take a picture of it. But it's top heavy on one side because we have 3 resin branches and 3 plaster branches. So it might, I don't know. We'll do it later. If Brandon was here, we could put it up. But no, I need like some young, strong, strapling men to pick that up. And Michael and I don't know. We'll just wait. We'll just wait for later. And plus, if I order this. If I get the other 2 branches with resin, I wouldn't be afraid of putting it up because the resin's light, and they could have it within 2 or 3 weeks. But the thing is, we finally did it. Hanukkah 2023, all the branches are represented. So I met that goal, but and Gina's like, you're not going to get it together. Well, I guess she's right in a sense, but I would have done it had not the. Because it's long, and they don't usually make pieces that big at the 3D printer. No. So they had to do it in 3 pieces, and it wouldn't. It's like Legos, but it won't. Without glue, it's not going to stay together. So because of the glue issue, I didn't put it together. But we're going to talk about the menorah today, and I want to look at a story about the menorah in the Bible. Actually, you could turn to Numbers chapter 8. Numbers chapter 8. Let's go to the book of Numbers. It says, and the Lord, Yahweh, he spoke unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron, and say unto him, When thou lightest the lamps, the 7 lamps shall be lit over against the candlestick. Actually, it's a lamp stand, not a candlestick. I don't think they used candles until the Middle Ages. Even if they had that invention before that, they didn't come into wide use until much later. In biblical times, they didn't often use candles. They used oil lamps, right? And Aaron did so. He lighted the lamps thereof against the candlestick or the lampstand as Yahweh commanded Moses. And the work of this lampstand was of beaten gold, and the shaft thereof, and flowers were beaten work according to the pattern which Yahweh had showed Moses. So he made the lampstand. So if you go earlier in the book of Exodus, it describes the menorah right after the description of the Ark of the Covenant. And I want to look at some pictures so you can read that in Exodus when it talks about, I got this King James Bible, so it's kind of 1611. Here it is. It's chapter 30. Let's see. We're looking at chapter, here it is. It's chapter, Roman numerals, 25. So we have the Ark of the Covenant, and then the menorah is described. There it is. This is chapter 25:31. And thou shalt make a candlestick, or actually a lampstand, of pure gold. So when I put this together, I was trying to get other artists to help me do this. It turned out it was me. I guess Josiah worked on a little part. Jeannie, Christine were the ones that made it. Of course, my dad, building off my dad's work. So Judah Myers, she does painting. It's like, hey, Judah, why don't you help me with this? And we're going to have this. This is going to be the only accurate replica of the menorah on earth. And then Judah's like, well, is it made out of solid gold? I said, well, it's not made out of gold, but it's going to look like it's a replica in appearance, not in substance it's made out of. But it was made out of beaten gold. So let's continue. It says, his shaft and his branches, his bowls and knops and flowers shall be of the same. And 6 branches shall come out of the sides thereof. 3 branches the candlesticks out of one side, 3 branches the candlesticks out of the other side. 3 bowls shall thou make unto almonds with a knop and a flower, and 1 branch and 3 bowls made like almonds, and the other branch with a knop and a flower. And so are the 6 branches which came out of the candlesticks. So it describes a pattern of blossoms and almonds. It describes that. And then the Archititus menorah, it shows that. But the rabbis, the Bible's wrong. Moses is wrong. Dispense with that. I don't understand why. Well, we'll look at the issue.
But it has to be to hold the oil. If you look at the almond bud and what they're describing, it has to be that shape to hold the oil.
Right, we'll look at the picture in just a second.
Yeah.
So it says the candlestick shall be 4 bowls made like their almonds, their knops and flowers, and there should be a knop under 2 branches the same, and a knop under the 2 branches the same, and a knop under the 2 branches the same. According to the 6 branches you shall make, the knops and their branches shall be the same. They shall all be a beaten work of pure gold. And thou shalt make 7 lamps thereof, and thou shalt light the lamps thereof, they may give light against it. All right, let's go to Zechariah chapter, prophet Zechariah. And I was talking about Zechariah earlier. Zechariah it's one of these books that's overlooked. It's the minor prophet, But Zechariah is one of the most important books prophetically. A lot of the prophecy, the Passion, the Passion Week, riding the donkey into Jerusalem, being betrayed for the pieces of silver, smite the shepherd and the sheep shall be scattered. Those are all from 2nd Zechariah, which is Zechariah chapter 9 through 14, part 2 of Zechariah. So let's look at this. So the context is, and I think this is a very interesting period of Jewish history. And that's when Ezra and Nehemiah brought the people out of Babylonian back to their homeland after 70 years in exile. Ezra and Nehemiah. And there's others, Zechariah, Haggai, and they're led by 2 men. Of course, Ezra and Nehemiah are pivotal, but before them was Zerubbabel, who's a descendant of David, and he's the governor of Judea under the Persian rule. And then the high priest Yeshua, which is not Jesus, this is another guy with the same name, right? So apparently there's this big struggle. We see it in the book of Nehemiah. There's all this opposition. They're trying to go back and restore the land. And they're both under attack, right? It was a long process. Haggai, he talks about rebuilding the temple. There's all kinds of obstacles. And then people just lost the zeal to do it. So Haggai's like, it's like, look, it's what's going on in our country too. It's like, you try to save up money, it all goes away. And it's like, hey guys, well, what's wrong? The problem is you're not putting the Lord first.
Right.
You're neglecting the temple.
Right.
You're pursuing your own desires and needs. You're not thinking about God being the center of our being and of our nation and of our identity. And of course, once they rebuilt the temple, then showers of blessings came down. So this is very interesting. And if you read the apocryphal books like we're talking about this morning, 1st and 2nd Esdras, which is Esdras is the same way of saying it. It's the Greek way of saying Ezra, deals with this issue. He actually talks about the canon, and then in the last days finding these other books, right? And I mentioned this morning the book of the Didache, which is part of the New Testament for a long time. It disappeared, and is only found in the 1800s. So let's continue to read this story here. And the angel, he talked with me. He came in and he woke me up. So there's this angel that was speaking to Zechariah, and he's sleeping. All of a sudden, this angel wakes him up. He wakes up at the start as a man that's waking out of his sleep. And he said to me, "What do you see?" And I looked, and I said, "Behold, a candlestick all of gold, with a bowl on top of it, and 7 lamps thereof, and 7 pipes in the 7 lamps which were upon the top thereof." So anyway, I happened to be reading through Zechariah, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, the Bible talks about pipes carrying the oil to the lamp." And Dad's like, No. This isn't a description of the temple menorah. This is a unique vision that was given to Zechariah. Right? Zechariah is not describing the tabernacles or the temple's menorah. This is a unique vision he had.
Right.
And so he sees this. I want to look at the pictures too. I'll read the story and we're going to look at we got a lot of pictures. Okay, let's start off with this picture. So, we see the modern Temple Institute menorah. And actually, we had somebody here during Sukkot, and I was showing him the menorah. It's like, we're going to have this together very soon. Because I'm kind of, I could not believe this. When Dad was putting this together, Dad's like, this is going to be the only full-size, accurate replica of the menorah on Earth. It's like, come on, Dad. Like, we got 2 menorahs here on the table. There's all kinds of menorahs all over the world. There's got to be. No. There's no one's ever made an accurate replica of the menorah. This is going to be the first one in existence in the world. I didn't believe it. I said, "Well, Dad, the Temple Institute, they have a menorah. I saw a picture of it." And Dad says, "Look again." because their menorah is all jacked up. Sometimes the rabbis have some deep insights, but they're wrong about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
I hate to say it, but I think like 75%, you look at the rabbis have to say, and it's absurd, it's ridiculous, or it's wrong. 25% is like, well, that's pretty good. That's an interesting light.
I see where that
But
is.
they're wrong about a lot. And I don't understand. I don't understand when we read this description in the Torah. It talks about, you see it here, you see the knobs and blossoms, you see it right there. And what is the Temple Institute? Well, this is very significant. The book of Revelations describes the temple being rebuilt in the last days. It's going to happen. I think it is kind of scary because, when Yeshua died on the cross, that was the end of the animal sacrifice system. We don't need that anymore. We don't need to be sacrificing animals to the Lord. I don't want to see that happen. What did Yeshua say? He threw the animals out.
Well, he said, had they understood that, desire prayer, not sacrifice,
Right.
they would have rejected me.
My house is a house of prayer for all nations. That's the vision of the temple, is a house of prayer. But when they rebuild the temple, they're going to start. The Muslims do it every day, every year. It's part of the Eid. Around the Muslim world, they sacrifice. I was there in Egypt, and it's interesting. The Muslim feast the sacrifice, and that's when they celebrate the sacrifice of Ishmael. Passover, and it's amazing. I was in Jerusalem, I think it's 97. I started off in Egypt and I went to Jerusalem, and the Muslims had this, they bring a goat, or sometimes they sacrifice a camel, goat or a lamb. They sacrifice in their household. So I was going down the street, it's kind of gross, there's like body parts of lamb they threw out in the street. It's a lamb leg, from remnants and leftovers from their sacrifice. That's not what the Lord wants. I mean, it served its purpose, but I don't want to go back to that. But the temple, I am convinced, in the last days, the temple is going to be rebuilt.
Yeah. Well, they have the altar that they're setting up. They have everything now. They have the
They're breeding the red heifer. They finally got a red heifer.
Yeah, they have.
And they're very particular. It's like, this red heifer can't have one white hair on it.
Correct.
So
After you get a certain age, and that's going to be next Passover, I think they're going to do the first sacrifice of the red heifer.
So, as long as the Mosque of Omar is there, it's going to be. I don't see them building, but it's going to happen eventually. The temple is going to be rebuilt. So anyway, there's some extremist Jewish groups. They're all ready. So they built the menorah. They built an Ark of the Covenant. They're training their high priest. They're breeding the red heifer. They're all ready. Just whatever something happens, and they're going to build the temple. So they built this menorah, and it's wrong. It's wrong. So the Bible describes this pattern in the Torah, right? And the Romans did a replica in relief carved on a stone monument, and they just dispense with that. They just dispense with it. And what is correct is, you see there, it's a lampstand, so you have 7 lamps along the top. That's correct. But I don't understand why we have a specific description in the Torah, very detailed. And then the Romans, when they had their triumph, which is a military parade, they looted the temple, they displayed the menorah in the streets. And they actually had a museum, and they kept it for a while. Maybe it could be lost somewhere in Rome. It could be in the secret caverns of the Vatican. We don't know. It could have been destroyed or whatever. There's a possible. Some people think that the Vatican has the actual menorah hidden away, but this is what it looked like. But if you see, the basic shape of the menorah is always the same, right? You got the curved branches, but it has this pattern. It blows my. So anyway, I was talking to this man. It's like, hey, look at this menorah. This is the actual reproduction. It follows the scriptures. My father made this. Oh, it's wrong. The Temple Institute's right. And it's like. I said, what about the description of the Bible? What about, no, that's Temple Institute, the rabbis say, whatever the rabbi says, that this is a Messianic believer. Whatever the rabbi says takes precedent. The rabbis aren't wrong about anything. Don't question the rabbis. Whatever you do.
The Bible, though, doesn't describe the base it sits upon.
That's correct. That's the controversy, though.
Also, that's a 2-dimensional image representing a 3-dimensional
Right.
object.
Right.
I believe in reality it looks more like a candelabrum. Those branches, it's not even functional if you make a 3-dimensional object into 2-dimensional.
We're going to have a 3-dimensional object over here.
Well,
So
no, what I mean is the arms. Like if you look at
Not
candelabrum,
flat, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, some people think that they were at angles, but the issue I have is Josephus described it as a trident. What's a trident? It's kind of like, that's what,
Yeah, you have one.
it's like a
and
pitchfork
around it.
basically, right? The trident, they featured in a lot of movies,
So
in the
a
Pirates of
fishing-
the Caribbean, and
Yeah, a fishing trident actually looks like this. It's not the flat imagery that you're thinking of. A fishing trident looks like this, which
Yeah.
is an object, and there are an object swimming around
it's
it.
possible that they were at angles, but we don't know that for sure.
Correct.
So, and some people think that this image, they look at it and say, well, it's showing each of the branches facing a different direction. That it's meant to look like a tree, and if that's the case, that may be more tree-like, right? Because trees aren't,
Yes, flat.
But anyway, you can debate if they're lined up or if they were at, different angles from one another. But I don't think you can debate about this is what it looked like. Now what Michael's saying is correct, and there's a scholar named Stephen Fine who wrote a book on the menorah, and the question is, I understand this question. See, the thing is, the top part, there is no dispute about that. The Torah is very detailed, and the archaeological evidence is clear. It's possible that they took the menorah and they put it on this different platform or pedestal. But on the other hand, that pedestal could be authentic. And Stephen Fine, who's like one of the foremost scholars on this, thinks it is. And I've talked about this, because what do you see on the base of the menorah here? Let's look at some more pictures. Let's just go through these pictures.
Images
Man.
of beasts above and below.
There could be a
Which you would
spiritual
not
significance to
want
that.
on
So I put in the video, I told my brother, it's like, this is going to be the only full-size replica, and Josiah's like, well, John Hagee has a full-size replica of the menorah at his church, the Cornerstone Church in San Antonio. And I said, well, yeah, it's nice, but it's not a biblical menorah, it doesn't have the same pattern. I like to go over there and see that, but I said, that's nice, but it's not accurate. This is, some people doing artwork, and they're saying this is a biblically accurate angel.
No.
Most angels in the Bible are humanoid.
Yeah,
That doesn't mean that, or they're like sphinxes, like the cherubim.
They're describing the craft from the vision of the
The
world.
wheel
Not even
within a
describing
wheel,
an
yeah.
angel. They're describing the
Yeah,
craft
but
of the
apparently
spirit.
that thing is an angel. They really call it there's a word for it.
Wheels and with the eyes, and you can see people inside.
They're living creatures, apparently. The wheels are. But this is not, that's not accurate. This is a angelic being or a craft, wheels with eyes, but that's not, that might be what Ezekiel's vision looked like, but Ezekiel saw angelic beings standing beside the wheels, right? So here's another one. Yes, there were these, it does describe these wings with eyes in them, but that's not, I think it's not accurate to say that's what all biblical angels look
It's
like.
just one
Yeah.
person's interpretation.
Right, well, it's one biblical
There you
angel, it's
go.
not like
There's
all,
some of the, like cherubim.
right, this is a cherubim.
Yeah.
And I think this is found in the Holy Land. So that's why my dad made the ark look this way, because scholars think that the cherubim on the ark were like this. This is a depiction of biblical cherubim. All right, let's take a look at this
You find those
closer.
all over the world, by the way. The same depiction of what the cherubim look like,
Yeah.
spread out thousands of miles, they all look the same.
You can look at this, because Dad did these replicas. So on the bottom here, well, I'll point it with this. On the bottom here, you see a little hand. These are like winged horses with fishtails. It's called a hippocampus.
Yep.
So we see the hippocampus here. On the top, this is like a sea dog, a seal of something. In the middle, you have eagles with a scroll held between their beaks. On the bottom, there's a sea serpent. So Stephen Fine thinks that perhaps this is disputed, and I understand that. But Stephen Fine's like, well, this probably was the original pedestal or platform, the menorah. What would be the symbolic meaning of this? It reminds us how it says in the scriptures, the God of peace will trample Satan under your feet shortly. That we will trample on snakes and scorpions. So these creatures are all, except for the eagles, are all chaos monsters, right? The creatures of the sea. The sea represents chaos, right? If you look at the kingdoms in the book that Daniel sees, the kingdoms come out of the ocean, which is a force of chaos in a sense. I mean, there's different symbolic values of it. But what happens is, as you light the menorah, you're stepping on, you're defeating and trampling on the power of evil and the devil, right? That could be what's going on with that. So we see all right. this is the vision. I did a video of this, but what Hezekiah sees is he sees 2 olive trees, and this is very interesting. Of course, how do you make olive oil? You have a press, right? And you see these in the Holy Land. When I was doing archaeological, you have a millstone basically, and you put those olives in there, and you crush it. You crush it, and that's the spiritual sense of what Yeshua did for us. He's crushed for our iniquities. And where was he? He was in the Garden of Gethsemane, and Gethsemane means in Aramaic an olive oil press. So he was carrying that. He was going through that similar experience. But in this vision, there's a branch, 2 branches. And they had a pipe coming out of them. They're just exuding the oil. And the oil is going into a bowl, and then there's pipes feeding each of the lamps on the top of the lampstand. This is the vision that Ezekiel saw. And here's another rendition of it. So here's a picture of Ezekiel sleeping. The angel wakes him up and look and see the 2 olive trees exuding oil from pipes, from 2 branches, into a bowl, and there's pipes going out of this just has the pipes, the bowl just emptying into the menorah itself. That's a possibility as well. But that's not what was going on. This is not the menorah of the tabernacle, the temple. This is the menorah that the Lord showed. This would actually make things easier. Probably one of the most menial and tiresome tasks, tedious tasks in the temple or the tabernacle, is constantly lighting the menorah, right? So somebody's like, "Whew, I wish we had a big oil."
I wish it would just feed itself. He shows him the dream. You'll never have to light it again. It'll light it.
Yeah, Zechariah might have been a priest. It's like, yeah, this is kind of tedious. I have to watch it, make sure the lights don't go out, and got to keep on feeding the oil into it, trimming the lamps all the time. So it's a burdensome task that one of the lower Levites probably had to do. But living the life of a believer is not always easy either. We have to constantly tend to our spiritual life and make sure our light is always burning, because it's going to go out, and we have to feed it. We have to nourish the flame, right, with the oil to keep it lit.
And who comes and checks in the night to make sure that the lamp is still lit? The head priest. He would come through, and then it says, legend has it, right, if he found you sleeping, he would light your robes on fire, and you'd wake up right, everyone know you were shamed.
It talks about that
and so
in
like
Revelations.
A thief in the night.
Yeah.
And they say that's referring to the head priest checking on you to make sure you're watching. So when Jesus says, I come like a thief in the night, it's the head priest to see if you got your lamps burning.
It talks about that. Somebody thinks that, no, it's Hugh Schofield, I have the original New Testament, he refers to that, but he says it's the guards in the temple, but it probably was originally the priest who is designated to keep the light burning.
It's got to be the boss. It falls on the head priest's shoulders.
Yeah. So this is another picture of Zechariah seeing this vision. So this is another picture of the, let's see the animals in there. It's kind of amazing. I'm glad, so the Romans made this to show we have defeated Israel, and that's why they made this replica, but it's important archaeological discovery. Once again, another simplified picture. The 2 branches, the oil's coming out of these. That's not natural. That's a supernatural thing. The bowl with the pipes feeding it.
That's right.
Here's another depiction. These different artists. So look at this. Is kind of interesting how this person did it. Oops, I'm gonna go the other way. So he has like 7 menorahs, and he's got
weird.
Right. He's got the pipes coming down from the trees and the big bowl, and actually seven menorahs, and 7 pipes going each of the 7 menorahs. This is probably one of the most beautiful. Excuse me. Nice painting of it. So you have the 2 olive trees. You got the pipes pouring the oil into the bowl, and the pipes going down to the branches. Right. This is another rendition, and this person's saying, "Well, maybe it wasn't a menorah, 7-branch menorah at all." So I think it was, huh?
But the branches will catch fire.
Oh yeah. It'll be like the burning bush over here. It'll be okay.
Smokey Bear's worst nightmare.
Only you can prevent forest fires. Not necessarily always true, but
Yeah.
let's see. Did we go through all the pictures? All right. No, we did not. So this thing's not participating. Okay. All right, let's enlarge this. This is inside. Joseph and Joyce actually went to Rome and they saw this. So what we have here, apparently they had a Torah. It's probably a painting of a Torah scroll. They had the main Torah scroll they took and they paraded in Rome. This is the menorah. They're carrying on a pulse. And this is how Dad got the correct dimensions, is because you can measure. People were a little bit shorter back then, but you get the average dimensions of a human being. And these are the silver trumpets, and this is the table of shewbread, right there. So Romans like to do, it's kind of barbaric actually. They do, they have a defeat an enemy, and then have a big military parade. They'd always execute, form publicly. So this is the Temple Institute. Those cherubim are wrong. Solomon's temple actually had 10 menorahs and 10 tables of shewbread. I don't think we look. Do you see this one? It's another. All right, I'm going to conclude real quick. I think this is very important.
Oh wow, that was cool.
Yeah, they're doing it. Maybe it wasn't a 7-branch typical menorah, but I think I think Zechariah did see a 7-branch menorah. But some of these artists are saying, and they're right to say that this is not the tabernacle or temple menorah. This is a unique vision that Zechariah had. But let's look at his prophecy. I'll conclude with this. It says, so he sees this, and I answered, I spake to the angel that talked to me, saying, what are these things, my Lord? The angel talked with me, answered, said, no, it's not what these things be. And I said, no, my Lord. And he answered, said to me, this is the word of the Lord, the word of Yahweh unto Zerubbabel, saying, not by might, nor by power, but by my spirit, saith Yahweh Sabaoth, the Lord of hosts. Not by, it's kind of unfortunate. By the way, I talked about how Daniel prophesies the coming of the Maccabees. So does the book of Enoch, actually. It's this weird, it's kind of strange. It's like there's all these animals that represent, prophets and tribes and nations. So scholars like, okay, this animal, that's actually Isaac, Abraham, this other animals. But they believe that in the interpretation of that, it refers to the book of Enoch is referring to the Hanukkah story. But Hanukkah is about a battle for religious freedom. And the Jewish people decided to focus on different aspects, like the oil lasting 8 days, or a tradition about that, which isn't in 1st and 2nd Maccabees, it's a later tradition. But they used this verse during Hanukkah, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord of hosts. Because the Maccabees had to use, of course, the Lord used them, but the Maccabees had to fight by might and power to win religious freedom. Our founding fathers did. A lot of those men lost everything or died. They put everything on the line for American freedom and independence. And now we're squandering everything they did. And, it wasn't easy. Just a Valley Forge, and people they weren't equipped. They didn't have proper clothing. Men were barefoot. And like you said, sometimes you find bloody footprints. Oh, that's how you follow the bloody footprints and find where the American revolutionaries are. However, yes, what we do in this world is important. We need to stand up and we need to fight. But it's God is going to give us deliverance. Jeff was talking about Julie Green. And Julie Green says, you look at how everything is going. It seems to be going bad. But God is in control. God's going to deliver us. And what's going to happen is the Lord is going to get the glory. It's not going to be any man, any human being. It's not going to be the electorate. It's not going to be turning things around. God's going to give us deliverance by his sovereign and mighty hand.
That's how.
And like with this election, it's like, oh, Ernest Bales has got, all this money from Trey Harris. In the end, maybe it's not going to do him any good when he's exposed for what he is and people know. It's like, how can you vote? Honestly, how can you vote for that? I was talking to Bob Rahak, and he's, flying a helicopter. It's like, oh my, what in the world? What is this mess? Well, that's Ernest Bales and Trey Harris, scar on the face of Texas. We're going to believe God's going to deliver us from this evil. So, not by might, not by power, but by my spirit, saith the Lord. Verse 7, who art thou, O mountain? Before Zerubbabel thou shalt become a plain. Thou shalt bring forth the headstone thereof with shouting, saying, grace, grace unto you. You see his obstacles. What are we going to do? Where's our hope? Our hope is in the Lord God. right? Maker of heaven and earth.
Right.
Don't worry about these obstacles. God's going to take these mountains and shatter them and make them a plain. That's what it says. Moreover, the word of the Lord said to me, the hands of Zerubbabel shall lay the foundation of this house, his hand shall finish it, and thou shalt know that Yahweh of hosts has sent me unto you. Who has despised the day of small things? For they shall rejoice when they shall see the plummet in the hand of Zerubbabel, even those seven, which are the eyes of the Lord, which go to and fro from the face of the earth. There's a lot of, I don't have time for it, there's a lot of symbolic value in the menorah. It mentions, well, we see, actually, our eyes are our light, right? Even though our eyes, and technically speaking, scientifically, our eyes are receptacles of light, right? But we have light, and we see light through our eyes. So our lives, in a sense, even though they're receptacles of light, they're our light. And these seven lights represent the lights of the eyes of God going forth throughout the whole Lord. But everything's naked before the Lord, right? Solomon's temple was great and glorious. Zerubbabel's temple is more of a humble edifice. But the Lord says, it doesn't matter. Don't despise these small things because I am in it. And that temple, it wasn't destroyed. It was dismantled by Herod to rebuild a more glorious temple. But this is Zerubbabel's temple was not destroyed by the enemy. It endured until it was just reconstructed. So they had a temple, right? The devil destroyed the Babylonians. They had a temple. It might not have been as flashy and opulent as Solomon's or Herod's, but it was sufficient for the needs of the people, and it supplied their needs, and it endured for centuries. So don't despise the small things.
Right.
Then I answered and said unto thee, what are these two olive trees upon the right side of the side of the candlestick and the left side thereof? And I answered and said, these are the two olive branches which go through the golden pipes, which they empty the oil out on themselves. What is this? What is going on here? He said, no, it's not that these things are. And he said, these are the two anointed ones that stand by the Lord of the whole earth. So the two branches, it talks about Joshua in the earlier chapter, but this is Zerubbabel, who represents civil power under God. And the other branch represents the high priest, who represents spiritual authority under Yahweh, right? That's what these two branches. And of course, what is the olive tree symbolism? In the book of Romans, you have the wild branches grafted into the olive tree. And you also have the two witnesses in the book of Revelation, which would probably represent Enoch or Moses and Elijah. And Moses is kind of he's a legislator, right? That's what Moses is. So he represents, even though he represents spiritual power, but he also represents civil authority. While Elijah represents prophetic ministry and the activity of the Lord. So this is the Lord's Supper. I think it's very deep and important, and I hope you enjoyed the graphics so we can see what's going on with this. And read Zechariah. And notice, when our Lord and Savior Yeshua the Messiah, when he appeared, his last appearance, when John sees Yeshua, how does he appear? He appears as the exalted Son of Man, using terminology found in, Yeshua talked about the Son of Man, found in Enoch and Daniel, right? The Son of Man, the cosmic messianic figure. But he appears with a menorah, right? And each one of those lamps represented a church. And you know what? We need to keep our light burning. Keep your light burning. And the Lord says, you need to get right with God, or I'm going to take that lamp off of the pedestal. We don't want that to happen, do we?